started at an entry-level position how many years ago?
14 and a half.
How
Yes.
time flies.
Yes.
And you've moved up in leadership roles, and I've got to watch some of that growth over my 9 years here.
Yeah.
What has that journey been like for you?
Long. It's been long, George. But I started here at 23 years old, right out of college, and which was about 14 and a half years ago. And I started as an assistant on our marketing team. And the company was about 140 people, which now you look and we're over 1,100 people. And so I've seen a ton of growth. But I stayed in the assistant role for a couple years. And my leader at the time, who's been on this podcast a couple of times, Jen Sievertson, she asked me to come into her office and she said, "Hey, I want to talk to you about something." And I was like, "Okay." And she was like, "I really think you might do well in this other position where we need somebody." And I was like, "I don't know. I'm not sure I really want to do that." And she just sort of gently kept nudging me and pushing me. And we still joke about it to this day because I still work pretty closely with her in my role. And she says that she saw a lot of potential in me. And I always say, like, "It's okay, Jen. I can say that, like, I was a terrible assistant and you needed to find another place for me." But she still holds firm to that. So I did. I moved into that role, which was in project management. And I worked in project management for about 3 years here at the company. And I was having another conversation with a leader, and he was asking, the question all leaders ask their team members all the time: where do you see yourself going? Like, what's your vision for your role and for your career? And I said what any 26, 27-year-old would be like, I want to grow. And I was like, but I do know one thing, like, I do not want to be a leader. And that's just kind of where we left it. And 2 or 3 months later, I was back in his office and he said, "Okay, I need you to start leading." And so I just kind of looked at him and was like, "I'm sorry, I thought we had like an agreement here where I said I did not want to do that." And it was just another example of a leader seeing something in me and believing something I didn't believe about myself yet. And I'm a 1 on the Enneagram. And so I'm totally motivated by not failing. And in my mind, like, stepping into leadership and stepping out of what I was comfortable in was a possibility for failure. But he sort of gently nudged me into that. And I started leading and led within project management for about the next 5 years. So I was getting close to being at the company for about 10 years and was getting to work on some personality initiatives and doing project management with those teams and with those personalities, and was just realizing how much I connect to what the personalities are doing and what they're taking out into the world, even more so than what I was doing in project management, which had always been an amazing place and a safe place for me. And so this role opened up for a brand leader, which was a new role within the company. And I was able to step in that. And so I've been brand leading for Rachel Cruz for the last about 3.5, 4 years. And in the last couple of years, I've gotten an opportunity to take on some leadership with other brand leaders. And I love just leading in such a unique part of our business. There's not really anything else like leading in the personalities area. So
Yeah, that's amazing. I love your story, and there's so many lessons that we could unpack from that. But a leader seeing potential in you. A good leader asks you, "Hey, what is your vision? What like really lights you up?" And then notices that, finds opportunity for that, and nudges you, as you said, into that. And so that's a great example of what it looks like to level up. And the people who are itching and raising their hand constantly, "I need to be in leadership," it's usually a sign they're not ready for leadership, versus your story, which is the reluctant leader.
Yeah, I was totally a reluctant leader. It's not lost on me the part that other people played in my journey here. And I'm super grateful for all those people. All of my leaders have always been some of my biggest cheerleaders. And like I said earlier, they saw things in me that I couldn't see in myself yet, and believe things about me that I couldn't believe about myself yet. And that's something that I've tried to carry forward in working with my teams as well.
So on top of your roles, multiple, I guess now, you also lead what's known as Ramsey Solutions Leadership, or RSL for short. What is that, and how did it form?
So I'm just one part of leading that. We have a whole committee that works on that, and I don't want to shock you with the creativity, but it's called Leadership Development Committee, and it's responsible for developing all of our leaders in the company.
It's known as LDC around the building.
LDC around the building, for short. We love an acronym all day long. But so I'm a part of that committee, and as part of that, I work with a few different groups, but it has multiple levels to it. And we put a lot of intentionality into growing and having our leaders poured into by other leaders and them spending time together. And so if I kind of go from where you could be if you're not a leader yet, there's an aspect of that within RSL all the way up to the operating board. And so that earliest level is open to anybody in the company, and we call it Entre University, and it's basically like Clay said earlier in the podcast, an aspiring leader. We're all leaders, right? But if you're an aspiring leader, you better find yourself at that monthly meeting at 7 a.m. in the morning. And it's where we're just teaching like how we run this business and what are the principles we make decisions on. And then there's a kind of a second level of RSL, which we really want you to be leading people or leading products or projects that are of some kind of scale. And you get nominated into that by your leader. And that is also a monthly meeting. And that moves more from just understanding how we do things to really understanding the tactics you're responsible for day to day, like in the trenches of leadership. And then we actually have a couple other levels that meet monthly in mastermind groups. So that's some of our top leaders from all our like disciplines and business units across the company. And again, they meet monthly in those masterminds, and that's moving more from tactics to like accountability and that ongoing accountability with other leaders. And obviously that's highly relational. And we do all of this, and we invest a lot of hours every month into all of those meetings and into those plans and those things. And again, we have a whole committee that meets weekly just to talk about how we're developing our leaders across the company.
That's amazing. And it wasn't always this way. We've gotten a lot better over time about creating these kind of growth tracks for our team because as a growth company, people come here and they want to grow in their role. They want to step into leadership roles. So how do people do that well? I'm sure you've seen it modeled poorly and modeled really well. If someone's listening and they're going, Katie, I'm not where I want to be. I want to level up. I want to step into this next thing. How do I do that tactfully?
Yeah, I think a couple of things that have helped me in doing that as I've grown in leadership and as I've moved roles in the company, probably 2 or 3 things I would call out. We have a leadership model that we use, and we use that a lot in all of the RSL and LDC things we do, but it's we use it for growth conversations, to manage expectations, to have a lot of help leaders self-identify their strengths and their weaknesses. And it's vision, results, relationship, and then there's ongoing personal transformation that kind of is the engine that keeps all of that running, right? And so if I look at that for myself and where I've seen myself be able to use those things well, I'm relationships, results, and vision. Those are kind of mine in that order. And if I pull out a couple, self-awareness has been huge for me. Like the ability, it's not constantly looking inward and being like, what's going on with me? That's not what that means. It's my ability to kind of be aware of the wake I'm leaving. And so as I'm going in and out of meetings or in and out of one-on-ones, being able to read a room, read people's body language, and say, what effect am I having on the people around me? And being aware of it is one thing, but being able to go and follow up on it is another thing. So being willing to say like, hey, when I said this thing, I saw you react this way. And sometimes it may have nothing to do with you. It may be something that's going on with them, but being willing to go have those conversations has kind of constantly kept me grounded. And then I think keeps me humble, which is just another huge part of being a leader. And then Clay said this earlier, but it's also just a huge one, healthy conflict, like the ability to do that. I think a lot of times we can blow it up into this huge thing. And it was one of the reasons I thought I didn't want to be a leader, because I was like, I'm not good at doing conflict. And it looks like it's just a whole lot of conflict all the time. And so that was one of the reasons I was kind of shying away from moving into leadership. But once I realized that I'm a highly relational person, I realized how leaning into healthy conflict could come for me. And it's actually something now, like I come to the table with a lot of energy for. And it's not like I wake up in the morning and I'm like, I'm so excited I get to do healthy conflict, or I get to do conflict with someone today. But I do come to the table with energy because I feel like it's a thing that helps us move forward. When we're not having healthy conflict, or we're not leaning into that, I feel like we find ourselves stuck in these cycles of having the same conversations over and over again, or expecting people to change, but we haven't told them how they need to change. And so being able to lean in and have a hard conversation with somebody just creates forward movement. And I'm all about forward movement because my second one is in results. And I think just the ability to like get stuff done is huge. If you give me something, and this has kind of been true of my whole career, I will run it to ground and I will make sure it happens. And what I've transitioned to in the last few years is being able to delegate that and bring people along in that and just coach people. But those are probably the 3 that I see have helped me win as I've moved through, and that I try to coach in other people that I'm working with as well.
I love that.